question. The blood coming from the first blood. You were making that. Were you thinking about to make money, or were you thinking about the films?
I mean, when we made Blood Feast?
Yes.
All right. You ready? Herschel and I had made, probably a dozen little pictures, some nudist colony pictures, some pictures we call nudie cuties. We even made a picture that established a whole genre of film called the roughie, which was a combination of sex and violence. But after a while, you get a little tired of this. I mean, sure, looking at pretty young girls running around in various stages of dress and undress is kind of nice, but after a while, it gets a little boring, and we were looking for something else to do, and something that no one else had ever dared do. Because we were independents, we couldn't just go out and make another film that try to compete with Warner Brothers or Paramount. We didn't have the money for one thing, so we had to make something that no one else would dare do. So one day we were sitting around our office and saying, hey, what can we do that no one else has ever done? Something that's got to be in bad taste. And so out of this discussion came a four-letter word. Not the kind of four-letter word you think, gore, G-O-R-E, which is a very good old Anglo-Saxon word that goes all the way back to Shakespeare. And it means blood, gushing gallons of blood. And so then, okay, what can we do to legitimately show all this blood flowing other than doing an autopsy or making a medical picture? And out of this discussion came the idea for a film about a monster, an Egyptian caterer who needed the parts of young virgins to prepare this feast. And, on the way down, we had actually been contracted to go to Miami to film another picture for a couple of other people, one of whom was married to this big burlesque star, Virginia Bell. And they wanted to make a nudist picture starring this Virginia Bell. So Herschel and I had been contracted. On the way down to Miami to make this other picture, he and I wrote the script for Blood Feast on the plane. It's a 2-hour flight from Chicago to Miami. We got down there, we finished the other picture for these fellows, and then we took 24 hours off to go to sleep, and we started making Blood Feast. We made this little picture in 4.5 days. It cost $24,500. It was shot on 35mm color. I think I bought 7,000 feet of raw stock from Eastman Kodak, and when we got through, we had a 6,800-foot picture, so we didn't have a lot of outtakes. In other words, there were no take one was it. And as near as I can figure out, I sold out my share of the picture very early. Big mistake, as did Herschel. But as nearly as I can figure out, this little $24,500 picture brought back eventually to the various copyright holders and owners a little over $7.5 million. So in that regard, it is probably one of the most profitable pictures ever made.
When you meet Gordon, and when did you make
all right. When did we meet?
How was it say?
No, when did we meet? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I had a very successful film distribution office in Chicago. And one day, excuse me, let's try that from the top. I had a very successful film distribution office in Chicago, whereas I was distributing films for other producers. And one day, a nice young gentleman named Mr. Gordon Lewis walked in and said, I'd like to talk to you about distributing a picture I'm going to make. And I said, yeah, sure, I know. He said, no, I've got all the money. I said, well, sit down. And so Herschel made a picture called The Prime Time, which I distributed. And that became the beginning of a lifelong friendship, and later on a collaboration of making pictures together.
In your films, there's a lot of blonde-haired women. Why?
Oh, well, I am very typical, atypical American male, and blue-eyed blondes are a staple in trade in American pulchritude, so to speak. And my wife is blonde. I've been married 49 years to the same lady. I just, what they say, gentlemen prefer blondes. I'm just one of those gentlemen. Yes, most of the heroines of my pictures are blonde and blue-eyed.
Conscious about you both make a new genre, the goddess cinema. When do you realize that you both has make something different? This goddess cinema?
Well, after shooting Blood Feast down in Miami, we wrapped it all up, came back to Chicago, and turned it over to an editor. The fellow had a little editing studio in Chicago. He was editing commercials and industrials. Chicago was a big market. His name was Bob Sinise. He is the father of an actor named Gary Sinise. Gary was just a little boy when we shot this thing, and nobody ever dreamed he would grow up to be a big American star. But Bob is editing this thing, and he comes to the scene where the girl's tongue is ripped out, and he called me up and he said, "Where are you going to play this?" I said, "Well, Bob, don't you worry about where I'm going to play it. You just get it finished. And by the way, we don't want it good. We want it Thursday." So, at any rate, he finished the picture, and Herschel and one other person did all the music. I was running the board, but Herschel and Larry Wellington composed the whole score, played it, just the two people, and we are looking for a place to play it. So our partner had a chain of drive-in theaters. So he said, "Well, what about opening it?" "No, we don't want to open in Chicago because if we don't do well, it'll be all over the business." He said, "Well, I have a drive-in in Peoria." Okay, 150 miles south of Chicago, in the middle of Illinois. If we drop dead in Peoria, who's going to know the difference? So we take a date, and I put out the vomit bags and put up the posters. So Herschel and I can't stand it any longer. We've got to go down to Peoria and see how we open. So we take our wives with us. So they had both seen the picture. They weren't in any mood to drive 150 miles to see this stupid movie again, and particularly that they hadn't had anything to eat. So I said, "Don't worry, there's plenty of restaurants open after we see the picture." We drive all the way from Chicago down to Peoria. We get about 5 miles outside of town, and we're in the back of a funeral procession. And I think, "Oh, come on, let's go." And then suddenly in the distance, I see the screen tower to this drive-in. And I said, "Herschel, they're all going in to see Blood Feast." So out in front of the theater, here's this Illinois State Patrolman. "You can't go in. We're full up. Get out of here." I pull up. I says, "Officer, this is the director. I'm the producer. I ought to run you people in. You've got my whole district all messed up." So at any rate, he let us in, and we sat through the picture, and the place is packed. There's not room for another car. Coming home, my wife starts screaming, "I'm hungry. I'm still hungry." But I knew after that night, after seeing that first audience in that theater, she'd never be hungry again. And then and there, I knew that we had something that was money in the bank. Now, here it is. That picture was made in 1962. Here it is coming on 2001. 38 years after that stupid little movie was made. People are still paying to see it. It has just come out on DVD. It has never not been shown in those last 38 years somewhere in the world.
Now, your opinion about nowadays gore or terror cinema.
Today's film. Okay.
Watching that they have made your films to be they have length of your films. So they wanted to know from that point of view.
Right.
What do you think about the nowadays film?
Well, ready? There is no question that Herschel and I invented a whole new genre of motion pictures. Our picture was 10 years ahead of Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, all of the other slasher films or gore films, call them what you will. As I say, this picture started the whole cycle of blood and guts on the screen. Now, today, it's come much further than we ever dreamed of. The effects today are so fabulous. I mean, there's just no comparison. I mean, Herschel and I, when we needed entrails, so to speak, we had to go out and kill a chicken or kill a cow or something to get to go to a butcher shop. Today, people like Rick Baker in Hollywood are absolute geniuses of makeup. I mean, it has come so... I sit there, I'm enthralled. I stay up all night long, 7 nights a week, looking at films on cable. I've got about 30 different cable systems that all run movies 24 hours a day. So it gives me something to do. And I think it's just absolutely sensational, some of the stuff that they can be done. Now, I had pretty well, after Herschel and I had a split up in 1964, I went out to Hollywood and I started making an entirely different type of picture until about 1976 I was hired by a Canadian firm to produce a really monstrous picture called Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. And this picture, I hired a makeup man named Joe Blasco, and he was the sort of the beginning of the makeup artist, and he created some very, very spectacular effects, much more advanced than the stuff we had done in Blood Feast. But as I say before, I look at the Scream pictures, I look at Scary Movie, I look at all of these films today, and I love them. I mean, to answer the question, I'm envious. I wish that we had those techniques. I wish I'd had that kind of money to make a picture like that.
Well, they give you the script. Will you
the only way you could remake Blood Feast could be as a terrible comedy. Of two characters that didn't know the first thing about making movies set out to make a movie. No, there's no way in the world anybody could go see something like Blood Feast in today's market compared to the other pictures. But that's a funny thing, though. That's a good idea, ain't that? Of two characters that want to make a movie, they don't know the first thing about making movies. Something, right? Is that we invented something. It went much further than we ever dreamed. There's no question of that. I certainly am not ashamed of having invented something with Herschel, having invented a whole new form of film. As I say, though, it's gone so much further. But I guess in one way you could call us pioneers, for better or for worse. Does that answer what is that?
I use that reason. He says that so kind person like you, for example, why do you make a gore film? He says that always he makes a kind person makes a gore film.
Why I would have to do this? Is that what he wants to know?
Yes.
Why I did this?
Yes.
Somebody had to do it. Such terrible films. How could you do that? And all I could say, well, somebody had to do it.